All right, I'm the director of engineering here. We've been hosting SWUG for quite a few years. I stopped counting a while ago, but I'm going to go over just kind of a quick presentation on a couple of fun tips and tricks for everyone. Thank you. And then we'll move on to some more in-depth presentations that we have some other people presenting. If you have any questions, if you don't mind holding them to the end, I just know we have some people remote and some people here. It might be a little hard to manage everyone talking at the same time, but we will definitely have time for questions at the end. All right, thanks. So what I'm going to go through today is using model items or creating auto drawings, as I like to say. And then a couple of tips and tricks, including using your shift key for selecting, the star key, and a quick menu open. Sorry, 1 second. All right, perfect. So first one is model items. If we go through that. We've got a few tips to go through. So things to keep in mind when you're trying to use model items to auto create your drawing is designing your part the way you're going to want to draw it, which really should be something you're always keeping in mind anyway in a perfect world, but just something to note. I prefer always try to think about your drawing layout first, worry about dimensions second, and then move the dimensions to the best views that you can. Now, let me go through model items a little bit more to talk about that. All right, perfect. So I just whipped together a little example model here. It's really just a nonsense part, but it's supposed to look something like you may want to design with a bunch of different features that you're going to want to detail on the drawing. So I'm going to go ahead and just create a drawing first. So let's do make a drawing. I already created one earlier just to make sure that everything was working the way I expected, but I'm going to open up a new one here. And just like I said earlier, I'm going to create my views first. I'm not going to worry about dimensioning anything. Just want to make sure the views make sense. This is a standard template we have. We have some notes that pop in. I'm just going to delete those for now and kind of move my views where they make sense. So I think with these 3 views, I capture everything I need. SolidWorks has added, they're kind of like auto notes for the holes, but I'm just going to delete those because we're going to add our own. Now there's a few ways I could add the features or the dimensions for the features, but it's a fairly simple part. So I'm just going to go ahead and run all of it at once. So I'm going to say I want to do the entire model. I'm going to import the features that I've selected here. I didn't put any GD&T or anything else into this part for reference. So you can add additional annotation, surface finish, and stuff you might have put into the model. You can add all that. I didn't really do anything here. I don't often add surface finishes or anything into my model. I may put in some GD&T, but in this case, I didn't. So I'm just going to run model items with all that selected. And there we go. We pretty much have all the dimensions already in the model. Now, they're not necessarily on the views I want, and they might be a little messy. So that's what I'm going to do is spend a minute or two cleaning that up rather than worrying about dimensioning everything. So to start, I'm just going to move a few things around here just to make it fit the page. I didn't program SolidWorks, so I don't know why it decides dimensions should explode all over the place, but I think we all live in that world and know that happens. There's a few dimensions that I could see I would rather be in a different place. To move those dimensions to a new view, I'm just going to hold down shift. So right now I'm holding shift. I'm going to click this dimension, and then I'm just going to drag it to this view. And now this dimension's over here. So anytime there's a dimension, for example, I want this one over here. I think this is my preferred view. I'm just going to click and drag. For everything else, I'm kind of just doing a little cleanup here, but mostly putting things in their place. Now, a few limitations I found with model items. So I wanted to specifically note, it's not all magic. It's not going to save you all the effort. As you saw, you have to do a little cleanup. The other thing that's going to happen, sorry, I don't want to lose this brown. It overlapped a few dimensions. The other thing that's going to happen is your chamfer dimensions are going to default to coming in like this. It's just an angle and a distance. If that's how you prefer to dimension it, that's fine. You could leave it like that. I don't particularly prefer that. So what I do is put in a chamfer dimension, hit those faces. I get that. In reality, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I would just call this out as typical. You know, a lot of different ways of calling things out depending on your drafting standards, but something like that. And actually, I think I can just throw that over here. So I'm going to throw that dimension over here instead. So again, anytime I want to move things around, I'm just hitting shift and I'm dragging the dimension. In this case, a couple of these instance callouts auto came in because I've played with this part before. I looked at it before. You may not get instance callouts correct the first time you create a part. So you just need to add in the 4 times or anything. We're all used to it. So keep an eye out for that stuff. But other than that, we essentially get all the dimensions we want, you know, with spending very little time. And these are all just to show you, these are just directly from the features themselves. So this is those dimensions imported in from the holes, from the cuts. Now I do want to mention so aside from the limitation, things like the chamfer call out may not call out the way you're expecting to. One of the things it may not call out the way you want are those dimensions. If, for example, I didn't have this dimension, but if I had just said I wanted this hole to be on center and done that. Now, if I go back to the drawing, it's still going to show, well, actually it broke those dimensions, but it was still showing them, so I'm going to delete that. But if I even tried to import specifically for this hole, it's not really going to import any dimensions. I think I selected that correctly. Oh yeah, I was just trying to undo that. So it doesn't have any dimensions associated with that hole because the I haven't used any dimensions. I've just used the origin to pin it. So in that case, keep in mind, it's only giving you the dimensions you put in. So you could base it off center lines or something if you want, if that's how it's gone in, or you'll just have to create those dimensions after the fact. So that's one of those like kind of annoying things. I know I often will use edges or something rather than actual dimensions, and just keep in mind those won't import. I do want to show real quick, even if you were to go in and add a new feature, I'm just going to unsuppress this hole here. If I go back to my back to my drawing, the hole will show up, but there's no dimensions yet. It's not a live reaction. It's not constantly importing things you change, but you can go to model items again, go to selected feature. So I'm going to click directly on that hole, and now it's imported all those dimensions. So you can update your model and still use model items, I should say. And then now you just have that extra hole call out. And we'll move that over here. And that's pretty much how we would create that drawing. And I think probably a lot less steps than I would create manually. This drawing obviously isn't terribly complex, but it was still, I had already put in all the work when I modeled it. I might as well use that work and auto generate the drawing rather than, you know, having to recreate all the dimensions on a separate page. So we're big fans of having the models drive the drawings, not the drawings drive anything. In a perfect world, we think that's the preferred method. before I move on to my next subject, I don't want to get too far away from this one. Does anyone have any questions about model items?
Yeah, mention that. You got in there.
Yeah, these ones. Oh, this one.
Yeah, the extension line for the dimension, but all the across that.
Oh yeah, rather than these pulling back. Let's call that another limitation of model items. I think that has a little bit to do with it will base it off sort of a initial. It just depends on the feature and how, if it was pulling from an inside edge, if you modeled it a little differently, it may not pull from that inside edge and create that. Yeah, unfortunately, not other than just manually dragging it. There's definitely still that little bit of cleanup. Yeah, drawings are almost always a little bit of an art and a science to try and make it look legible, aside from just also having all the information. Any other questions? Oh yeah.
Just really looking forward to what really is your benefit of importing all of these, all of your features defined, so that you know how you want to show them drawing versus design intent and your model and manufacturing intent.
So just to make sure I understand and to reiterate for people online. So what's the benefit of designing it with those dimensions in mind versus just defining the dimensions later?
Well, defining your features so that you have the right dimensions for your drawing.
Yeah.
Versus design intent, model, manufacturing intent in your drawing.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, so
Your model always drawing, defining your drawing. You're drawing the model, but yeah, model.
yeah, so yeah, the difference between designing, yeah, the model having dimensions for your design intent versus the drawing having for your manufacturing intent, basically.
Kind of like,
Yeah.
why would you want to put your feature dimension in so that it's shown on my drawing being more important than the design?
Yeah. So I wouldn't say it's more, I guess and I apologize. I think I understand what you're asking, but I wouldn't say it's more important. I just again, there's a perfect world, and a lot of times we're also building things not necessarily knowing what the final thing is all the time. So there's definitely the world where this isn't going to work perfectly. But I think in that perfect scenario, we want to, I know I try to, at least, I'll put it that way, design it with my manufacturing intent in mind. And so I'm just trying to cut out the middleman. If I've designed to that intent, then when I have to output a drawing inevitably, because not that many places work just strictly off a model, I get that automatically, that drawing, and I don't have to put a lot of extra work in versus, and even versus just doing the drawing separately. Even if I only got half the information, if, like, let's say I had decided the intent was here a little different from how I'd actually wanted to mention it for manufacturing, I mean, that's still 90% of a drawing I didn't have to do. So it's just, hopefully saving time, that's all. And then you're absolutely right, though. Sometimes you might have to define it very differently from how you designed it. That happens, I guess. Yeah. All right. If there's no other questions, I will. Oh yeah.
I was doing a drawing the other day.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm doing SolidWorks.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make that isometric view shaded.
Oh.
That must be easy. I just couldn't.
Yeah, absolutely. So a quick question about how to make this shaded. It is very easy. And so you click on the view, And then if you click that button right there,
That was easy.
yeah, it's always nice to have SolidWorks do the easy or the hard things easy for you. Huh? So yeah, so you can just select on the view and you can change your different shading, whether you want with tangent lines or without. And you can do hidden lines as well. In fact, I'm glad you brought it up because originally I was going to change this view to hidden lines so you could see the other features from the top, just for reference on that. So yeah, good question. And there's another good tip for you guys if nobody knew, or if somebody out there didn't know, you can turn on hidden lines there. Yeah, I think if you do it to your so everything's generated from, in my drawing, generated from this one view. So I prefer to generate every view from one view. Every drawing starts with one view. Everything is generated from that view. So if I change this one to shaded, that generally, unless I've overridden it in this case on the other side, that generally will change the rest of the drawing. Whereas I can change individual views and it doesn't change every view. So since I was covering that topic, I might as well mention that. Okay. Yep, there we go. So aside from the model items, I just wanted to go over a couple quick tips and tricks that we had marked down. Every now and then when we're working in the office, one of us does something and we all pause for a second and go, wait, what did you just click? Because we didn't know you could do something. So we try to keep a running list of what those things are. And I just wanted to go through a couple of them real quick. And I just realized I forgot to pre-open this model. So I'm going to do that real quick. I don't think it'll, you know what? I'm just going to use this model. Live demo. So this is a different model than I was originally planning, but it should work fine. Just give me a second. So the first thing I wanted to do was show, so if something is transparent, let's make this knob transparent. Does anyone ever try to go click on it and is really frustrated when you can't select on the transparent model? Well, what you can do is if you hit shift, our old friend shift again, that will actually not treat the model as transparent. So now when you hover over it, I can click it. I can click on given faces. So right now I can't select it. If I hit shift, now I can select the face. It's one of those things that I know people have used SolidWorks for many years and they just didn't know that that existed. Obviously, I think a lot of us play the hover in space in a right angle and then you can get it because it's not behind anything. That works fine sometimes, but sometimes you just can't get the right angle. So just shift and now you can select the face. I wasn't originally going to talk about it, but something you can also do that's helpful is select other. So when you're in this mode, if you want to shift select because you're trying to select the line inside of the part, if you shift select select other, now you can select lots of things that you can see with the model being transparent. So that's just a bonus one. The other thing I wanted to show you was expanding the feature trees. Oops. That's an interesting one. One of our people just recently was trying to figure out, because we had a lot of, I'll just go through manually do it. So you probably all know if you open a lot of things, sometimes your feature tree can get kind of crazy and you've got a million features and you just want to collapse. I always do this anyway. I right click and hit collapse all so I can get a nice clean feature tree again. But sometimes you want the inverse and there's no expand all option. So eventually he figured out if you press the star key while you click open, it will actually open. I think I did that right. Yeah, it'll open everything within the part. Whoops. Maybe I'm not doing it. Oh, I think maybe my num lock has to be on. Hold on. Live demo time. Oh, my keyboard's not working. Why is this not working? What am I clicking wrong? Say that again.
Click on the feature. Yeah.
Click on the feature.
So if you have like an assembly in there or sub-assembly on that, then you can asterisk.
Oh, I have to kind of click it twice. Sorry, I forgot about that. I don't use it that often, and I forgot. You kind of have to select it twice. Okay, let's go through that again. That's my fault. So if you select, yeah, so let me select the assembly. And then, so you have to kind of pre-select it, then hit the asterisk and select it, then it'll kind of fully expand everything. So anyway, point is, if you always are looking to expand a larger feature tree of items, say you've got multiple sub-assemblies stacked up and you're trying to see everything in it, you can kind of expand everything all at once. That's one of those things. I don't actually do that often. However, when I need it, it is super useful. But like having too many of those open like gives me anxiety or something, because I'm like, it's too chaotic. So I'm more of a collapse all person, and look at everything separately. But yeah, so your key there would be to select that, hit the asterisk key, and then you're good to open it. The asterisk being the star icon. And you do have to, I'll mention this, you do have to have a keyboard with a number pad. So if you try to do that same thing, but with the shift 8, because the 8 being the asterisk, that won't work. You have to use the asterisk on the number pad. So I'll just mention that as long as we're covering it as well. And then the last one is opening sub parts, basically. So what I always have done historically is, like, let's say I wanted to open, if I wanted to open this part, which is sub to this assembly, I would often click on, or I'm sorry, if I wanted to open this assembly, let me rephrase that. If I wanted to open this assembly, I would select a part and then I'd go find the assembly and then I'd open that. I don't know if that's what you all do, but that's what I always do. What I always forget is that you can select the part, right click it, instead of hitting open, which is normally what I would do if I'm trying to open the part, hit the arrow next to it, and you can actually open the assembly right there without having to go find it in your feature tree. I forget what that's a relatively new, I don't think that's been in SolidWorks for a huge amount of time, but I still have to remind myself to do that all the time, because I'm used to going hunting and finding the part and then going and finding the assembly. And especially if you have maybe 5, 6 assemblies deep, which we have all the time, it's really annoying to go try to find which one it is, rather than you could just select the part and it'll give you the whole tree buildup of what you've done. So you can really get granular and find what you want. All right. Well, those were my quick tips. So to just give a quick summary, save time using model items on your drawings. Hopefully you at least get some of the dimensions and stuff in there. If not, do the whole drawing. And then utilize some of these tips and tricks, hopefully, to save time next time you're modeling.